Hello. Hey, folks. Happy 2022.
Hi,
Hey, Terry.
Hello, Tracy. Hi, Terry.
Hey, Maurizio. Hey, Nicola. How's everybody today?
All good, all good.
Right. Yeah, Nicola and I have an update on the site. And Maurizio, I just saw your message in Slack. Did you want to give a quick hint and maybe we can get to that?
Yes. So I joined the meeting because Kara told me to join and to basically address this group for the example that I've been working on. So just for Terry and for Nicola, I've been working on a book that it's called Continuous Delivery for Kubernetes. And for that book, I'm writing kind of like a large example of a conference kind of like platform or application where like there are different microservices and I'm integrating the example with different open source tools. And because the name of the book is pretty much the same name of the foundation, I've been addressed several times before that the examples shouldn't live in my own personal GitHub organization. And it would be way better if we can have that under a foundation. And I think that the Continuous Delivery Foundation should be kind of like the place for those examples to live. So I've been kind of like approaching different people, Tracy included, like Kara and Oleg as well. They are all kind of like in favor of the idea, but I think that we need to start working on the specifics at some point. And Kara suggested me to join this group and basically just mention this to you folks to see if you can guide me kind of like what are the next steps that I should be taking on, if I need to convince some more people, or you know, any kind of like suggestions to move things forward, basically.
And the repo in question is the examples.
Yeah. So basically the examples are like step-by-step tutorials on how to, for example, deploy the application, how to build you know, the services with Tekton, how to, you know, use Knative for other things, how to use Captain, for example, and how to, for example, also like use CD events as well. So let me share the link. I will put the link here in probably in the Slack channel. And again, the repo is kind of like in constant modification because of the book and because of the examples that keep mutating. But if I were to donate this to the foundation, I would definitely refactor the examples to have all the same format, use all the same approach, have kind of like a clear list of requirements for each of them, and to make sure that they are kind of like independent of each other, so people can just run them on isolation without the need of like reading tons of steps or tutorials. Let me put that link into the channel.
Yeah. Hey, Tara. Hello. Hey, Anne-Marie. Welcome.
Hey, good morning. Sorry I'm late. Got caught up reading the news, which is never something one should do first thing in the morning, especially on a Monday.
No, I hope you've had your coffee. Hey, yeah, Maurizio was sharing details of a repo that complements his book, and he'd like to live under CDF.
Awesome. Is there a link dropped?
Yeah, I put it on the Slack channel. There you go.
Okay. Oh, and did someone grab the notes?
No, I have not.
All right. Oh, let me go grab it.
So I guess where we discussed some of this previously, we talked about having a section within the best practices website where we could have specific examples that were related to given technologies But if I remember correctly, we also said we wanted to remain relatively technology agnostic, and so I'm sure we can manage to incorporate this in the spirit of that.
The anything where we got specific, we were going to treat it as a case study or similar, if I recall correctly. So, because at some point it is important to talk specifics. What is today?
Yeah. The main goal for these examples is to enable people to run like an application that it's easy to understand, but it's like complexity level, it's like medium, where you can see multiple services working and then different open source projects like being leveraged for running or doing something with the application. And again, like the approach also is to have like a step-by-step tutorials on how to install things, how to run things, how to test different aspects of the tools that I'm showcasing there. And again, because I'm working on the book, these examples will be refined a lot, in the several 3-4 months. And if I'm planning to donate this, I would love to have some help from the foundation side on the formatting, maybe on the scope, maybe with some proofreading or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
Sorry, I was going to say, yeah, I agree that the key is just connecting this in with the best practices document and making sure it can be part of that story, and then suddenly it all comes together and it makes sense, and then you've got the book as well, which complements it nicely. Tara, did you?
Is Nicola on the?
Yeah. So yeah. So in terms of the breakdown of the site, in the sort of strawman skeleton that we have, there was going to be a community section, and the idea there is that that's where anything that wasn't, we would have sort of a learning section where we would have the best practices in general in a very vendor agnostic, explained in a vendor agnostic way. And then the community section would be a place then where we would host anything that were specific implementations or case studies or examples that implement these best practices. So this might be the section where we would put that information.
Yeah, I think that's what I was hoping we could do. All right.
Sounds good. So it sounds like the best practices are technology agnostic, and then we will have another section where we will have like more concrete examples using like real life tools, and that's kind of like where this fits, I would assume.
Yeah, that was the direction we were going with this site. So under the best practices, there'd be things about using version control and continuous delivery and automated testing and all that kind of stuff in a very general way. And then your stuff could then be hosted in the community section, and if Google has its best practices or wants to talk about Dora, then that could go in there as well. And then other foundation members could also add their content.
Yeah, I like it. And Mauricio, what's the status of the book? Is there anything that folks can look at just to see how that ends up being structured, to see maybe how it could tie in, or what kind of sections, what topics get covered?
Yeah, so there is kind of like an index there in the repository. I think that kind of gives you an idea of the tools that I'm covering. There is more stuff being added, right? So I think that there's like an open source projects list there, which is basically explaining different projects and how I'm using them. That's a very technical approach of describing topics. I'm pretty sure that I can rephrase some of the tutorials to follow kind of like the best practices topics. So then we can just map things together. I do not have, so I have access to the best practice. Is there kind of like a document for best practices that I can see and start thinking about how to map those things, like concrete things, to more like general topics?
So maybe we can talk about that because that's what we're evolving. So we do have a Word document, but to be honest, we're trying to get away from that document and move things into GitHub and specifically into the content behind the site, which Nicola has been helping us organize the information architecture around. So by way of an update on that, I've worked with Nicola over the break, and we do have it now running in CDF Netlify, which means, Nicola, in theory, we can open it up for folks in this group to be able to contribute.
So yeah, the idea should be that things that get committed into the best practices GitHub repo would then get automatically built and deployed to this preview site. In terms of being able to see the preview, my understanding is that only members of the Netlify account would be able to see previews before any changes are actually merged. But in terms of someone who's making a contribution, trying to preview their stuff, they could also do a local preview, like just set up a Docker container and run it and look at that locally if they want to see what the website changes would look like before merging things in.
And the preview idea, is that a limitation of Doxy, or is that just
no? It's the Netlify deployment. Like in terms of Netlify, I think my understanding from the Netlify documentation is that people who are in the Netlify account can see a preview of PRs before they're merged in. But I don't think anybody can do them. You said that something similar was set up for the landscape, right?
Yeah, so we do have the landscape, and that I believe it's hosted on Netlify, but it just spits out previews for anybody's PR once it kind of goes through the CI build stage. But yeah, I've never looked under the hood to see how that's set up. But I think, yeah, in the short term, I can certainly add members of this group to the Netlify, that specific site, so they can have access. But I think long term, we can figure out how does the landscape do it and what's the setup just to meet anybody who submits a PR. We get a preview environment, which should be pretty. I don't know. I'd like to think it's reasonably simple to set up, not simple, but straightforward, if we can just figure out the main things to get in place. Okay. So, yes, folks, who is happy to be added onto the Netlify site and maybe wants to get involved with that first batch of starting to move things from the Google Doc over to the site?
Yeah,
Yeah,
happy to move my stuff across.
Me too, please. And I can look at the CI/CD stuff.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
quick question, Tracy and Nicola, about the site. So you see, kind of like, if I want to contribute something, it would be to that repository and by the means of sending a pull request.
Yeah.
With, are you okay with having tutorials in that site, like on the community side of that best practice site, to have like kind of tutorials and just figure out the format?
I think maybe just bringing it to this group as a discussion, because we're still very early stages. So yeah, I think a PR would be fine, but I think it's probably so early and there's so little there that it might be more effective to just have the discussion here, and then we can kind of throw around how that fits into the overall architecture. Nicola can advise us as well, how, because there is a document where she's mapped out the thinking and how it all ties together. So it's helpful to bring those two sides together, the specific implementation plus the big picture.
Yeah, it makes sense. So maybe what I can do is, in order to start the discussion, maybe I can just pick one of the subjects that I have in one of the tutorials,
I
and
think so.
and then maybe just see where would that fit, and then discuss that with the group. And then if we have
Yeah.
kind of like an agreement, I can create a pull request, the first pull
Exactly.
request,
And
just to start that.
even doing that in Slack might make sense. And picking one specific thing might be a nice way to force us as well to think through that path of and how it connects.
Always nice to have a working example.
Yay. Good stuff.
And yeah, there's a few other
what-
things as well. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
One more thing that I wanted to mention is that the reason behind like my approach at this point is that the book is like being written right now, like I'm writing it and it's not finished. And what I would love to do is like before printing it, I would love to have the example somewhere else so I can point to those examples in the printed version. That's very ambitious, but I think that I will have enough time to make something like that happens if if we manage to move things forward. So I will definitely come back to the group with the proposal, like a small proposal, and I think that will be great if we can just evaluate it and make a decision at some point.
Sounds good.
Good stuff.
Cool. Okay. And the other thing I was going to mention as well, besides stuff in the Google Doc, and Nicola, maybe let's get your thoughts on this. In other parts of CDF, specifically the interoperability group and the event SIG, there's some work that happened on like definitions and terms, or even like what the interoperability group called the Rosetta Stone, which compares how different tools use terms in different ways. I was wondering if we wanted to think through which of those would make sense to be part of this document. Like I feel the definitions themselves could be moved under this work and featured there. I'm not sure about some of the stuff like the Rosetta Stone, but maybe we could link out. So yeah, I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, or whether you'd even seen some of that work on CI/CD definitions elsewhere.
Do you have a link to that? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask for the same
Gosh.
thing.
There you go, and find it. Okay, I thought that would be more straightforward. Talk amongst yourselves.
I'm just noticing, I got a new camera over the weekend and I am noticing, wow, I'm really dark. I'll have to figure out how to fix that.
Ring light next.
I have a ring light. This is with the ring light.
That's with the ring light? Okay.
Oh,
This is with the ring
wow.
light. So I think my, yeah, if I turn the ring light off, ooh. So what camera do you use, Terry? Your camera is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a 6K Blackmagic broadcast video camera.
I have a 4K and I know it can look better than this because this was, I asked someone else, like, what camera are you using? And they're like, oh, I got this Sony's ZV-E10, and but it requires fine tuning. I bet my ISO is like really, really wrong. I always have to look that up.
Yeah, you want it on a fairly wide aperture, and then boost it with the ISO if it's still dark.
All right, I will figure out how to do that. Cameras are so much more complicated than they used to be.
Okay, Anne-Marie has helped find one part I was looking for, which is that vocabulary. And there's another repo as well. I'm trying to find. This stuff is all over the place.
Yeah, so incidentally, one of the reasons I was stopping by, because I thought you guys might be interested just to know that the interoperability SIG is just starting to work on even more terms that kind of intersect with what you're trying to do a little bit. And got a couple early pull requests up that would love some feedback on them.
Yeah, I saw those go by and I definitely have it on my list to go take a closer look. So thanks for putting that together.
So that first link it's kind of a mishmash of industry terminology and specific products, which I consider kind of a different thing. Like a lot of these are products like Circle CI and Jenkins. So yeah, it's terminology, but it's not really their CI/CD products, not really terminology per se, or I wouldn't call them terminology.
Yeah, well, I think that the point in the interoperability group was that when you have terminology, you need to be mindful of how different tools use it, because there is such a lack of standardization.
Got it.
That
Yes.
it was translating it. So if you say pipeline in one tool, it encompasses perhaps a wider breadth of meaning.
Yep. I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Towards the bottom, they have this mapping of terms. So they're trying to say like, in Argo CD, a sync is what a job is.
Right. All right. Yeah, I'm seeing that now. Okay.
And it might be that that's too low level anyway for the scope of this. Take a look at
Probably
this
useful as a resource, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's definitely something that should be linked to in some useful way, right? And particularly when we start to build up the community section, I think it's going to be exceedingly useful.
And then there's this glossary, which is the work Christy Wilson had kicked off. It also started in the interoperability group, but then she tried to up level it, and I think that has a much stronger case for being part of the best practices work.
Oops, wait, here we go, hang on, copy.
Like the glossary is just very short right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the thing that was based on the whole argument about the whole CI versus CD versus CI CD and all the.
Yep. So I think we all got exhausted by that.
Our first
definition.
that was a fraught conversation. Okay. So but I think it would be. Yeah. I think this would be good. It kind of straddles, like it straddles the best practices with the use cases, because when we talk about best practices, how are they actually implemented, right? So I think there will be a very interesting way to approach how we do this. I say this in ignorance because I don't do information architecture, but I could certainly imagine as a consumer of this ways that I think it would be helpful. Okay, so how do I spell there we go. Interoperability is a hard word to just off first thing in the morning.
So one of the other things, just on the list for the best practices doc, like we want to get to a point where we've got a domain for it, and one of the suggestions that I thought that was pretty good that had come out of the strategy committee was about coming up with a strong brand for it and a name. And I know Jane Grohl of the DevOps Institute was the leading thinker around saying, get a strong brand, have it be something easy for people to grasp, so they can speak to it, share it. And what and the main blocker for us is just around domains. I mean, we can pick something reasonable and we can change later if we decide to brand it. But did folks here have any thoughts, or how should we go about doing that? Anybody specifically want to be involved if we get a little brainstorm session going around, brand and look and feel or any of that kind.
I think my brain shut down at the beginning of this. This is just to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking about. This is for the final published site, or
Yes.
what are we?
Yes.
Okay, so when we move from the staging preview Netlify,
Yep.
what is it called? Okay.
Yep.
I'm happy to sit in on it. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go to the strategy committee and as we're evolving it, get some thoughts. And I think there's a few examples out there from other folks who have done this, or even calling things de facto terms like the blue book or the this book, so it becomes known as a thing for best practices, or even as much as people discouraging the words best practices, so using some other kind of terminology that encompasses the sentiment but is a bit more maybe catchy.
Yeah, see, I'm bad at stuff like that, which is why I'm happy to sit in. Just don't know how useful I will be.
Right. Well, I'll go solicit some ideas and pitches, and maybe we can bring them back and get some quick gut feelings from this group of which of these sound good.
None of the tools that I ever had oversight over did I name. So, like Tinderbox, Bugzilla, all of those, I was not responsible for the naming, just the bug fixing.
And yeah, equally, if you can think of any kind of well-branded equivalent types of documentation, most of the ones I know tend to be associated with the parent company, which themselves have a good brand, if it's Stripe documentation or Hashiko or something like that.
Great.
Yeah, and I think we need to be mindful not to end up with a catchy buzz phrase that then becomes fashionable for 18 months. And everybody goes off and implements their own version of whatever the buzz phrase is, and it doesn't work, and then they all say it's terrible, and they'll never speak of it again. So
I'm not sure there's anything you can do to prevent that with human beings, Terry.
But I think if you keep the organization name in the branding for the guide, that helps to keep it tied back to the original source information, rather than letting it escape into the wild and to have a life of its own.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Okay, let me add. So you're going to organize the kickoff, Tracy?
Yes. Yeah, there's a few folks. I think in that strategy call discussion, we can pull in specifically. I'd love to get Jane Grohl, and it might just be we invite a bunch of folks to a specific one of these meetings and just say, okay, the specific topic is thrashing out a name, a domain, and a brand around it. But I'll ask around as well if any of our members or community folks have links to folks in the branding world who'd like to come along and offer some consulting.
We want something really cheesy like CDF effective.
That's beautifully terrible. I love it.
So. Yeah, maybe we have to have it later in the day and everyone can just bring BYOB and we just have a fun session. This is a total kind of thing you would do in person and just be super creative and come up with all sorts of nonsense. CDF effective.
There would be drinks and Post-its and much laughing.
Yeah.
Man, one of these days we're gonna get out of this goddamn pandemic.
No, it's official policy. We're in it forever now.
Anything anything else, Nicola, on the Netlify side that I need to take care of?
I don't think so. As I said, if there's something that's being implemented differently for the landscape that we can apply to make things easier for the best practices site, then that's cool. But otherwise, just let me know if there's anything else you need from me.
Okay. Yeah, it says site is deployed, set up a custom domain, secure your site with HTTPS. Cool. Okay. So I think that's all I have. So we'll get folks more permissions, then we can start building out more of the sites, and then maybe we can start kind of reviewing section by section as folks update it. In the subsequent meetings, we can just take a look at how it looks and see what else is missing, and yeah, start to open it up more widely to other contributors. Yeah, I'm pretty keen to, like, now we have getting something concrete in place, using that as a way to get more and more folks involved.
What's the for the Netlify stuff? Did you just set something up, or is there a CDF account, or?
There's a CDF account, and Nicola was able to transfer this over as one of the sites that's operating under that.
Yeah, so I had a Netlify account that I just set up, like a personal one, a free account, and then set up the preview site through that, and then I was able to just transfer ownership of that over to the CDF Netlify account. So the configuration should be exactly the same.
And then, yeah, so we can set up permissions. So it could be something like, you know, the folks who are part of the GitHub Best Practices SIG team get permissions, or like different levels for chairs versus admin. And yeah, I think just getting all of that set up will be good.
Rizzo had a drop off, right? Oh, okay. I'll ping him in Slack.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to cover today?
I will kind of, I guess I could put a couple words around the links that I sent.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so yeah, they're gonna cover this in, oh, maybe turn my video on too, say hi. Hi.
Hello, Anne-Marie.
So they're gonna cover this in some detail on the interoperability SIG meeting on the 20th of January, but just as an FYI, since you are looking at terminology, there's 2 pull requests up on their vocabulary doc right now that I put together with a lot of help with the folks at IBM. So what we're trying to do, IBM has something called One Pipeline, which is like Tecton pipelines with a bunch of Tecton tasks that, you know, you'll run your product source code through and it will get certified as, you know, meets all of our standards, right? And I used to work for IBM, now I work for Red Hat. And Red Hat, lo and behold, is trying to do the exact same thing. Have a whole bunch of Tecton tasks. And if you run your software through all those steps, then at the end, you get something that's certified as good enough, you know, it's secure and meets our standards. So we're looking at how we could share that. And we realized that one of the first things we need to do is just use the same terminology for the same type of step or task. And so that's what this is just throwing out there to the wild, hey, this is what, it's really based on what One Pipeline uses for all their different steps in the pipeline. But based on my experience working with other tools, I think it's pretty common. You know, I think this is shared terminology. And then the next level down from this will be saying, okay, for Tecton, you know, what does it mean for a policy step to be required or optional? What are the things that we expect as inputs and outputs to each of these steps? What are the standard SBOM formats that we're going to have as an output for one and input to the next step and things like that. But this is just the terminology phase of that. So.
Okay, sorry. Monday morning. Okay. Help my old brain. Okay, so making sure I'm capturing this correctly. So there's a process that IBM and Red Hat, as an adjacent organization to IBM, around this one pipeline model for customers to be able to have a tested solutions. I guess I'm trying to understand what that first part was.
Oh, the
And then
pipeline
there's-
actually starts out as internal use, right? So for my own company, here are all the things that all the check boxes in order for me to be able to ship something and say it's like ISO, ISO 7001 compliant or whatever, or FedRAMP compliant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So customers using this know that they can have an attestation around that compliance that IBM, or in this case, or Red Hat.
Yeah, that was the
Okay,
terminology I was going to say.
okay.
That maps to like Google attestations. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, but what this piece of it is just using the same words for the same concepts. Yeah. But the bigger project that's going on is, an open source project, right? We're trying to get more things out in Tecton Hub that can work together with each other, because the same type of task will use the same inputs and outputs. That's the bigger goal of all this.
Okay. So meaning that if your project does these things, it could submit itself for compliance review. I guess.
Yes. Yes. So I think what we're thinking Tecton will do is, for example, there can be a standard task in Tecton that says, make sure that my GitHub pull request had reviews on it, right? We should all be able to share a task like that. And then my corporate policy, my internal version of that would say that that task has to pass. My pipeline says that check has to be true. So I think, what I see here is that there's a series of checks that all sorts of organizations go through to certify themselves. You've checked your known vulnerabilities, you've done static scanning, dynamic scanning, all this stuff conceptually is the same series of checks. And everybody's would like to be able to reuse Tecton tests to the greatest extent that they can to implement those. So I think everybody's going to have their own pipelines, but hopefully share a lot of tasks.
Right.
And if I use
Okay.
Sneak and you use White Source, like if they had the same input and output format for their tests, then I should be able to just swap those out. So
Yeah, definitely. And just quick question just between Red Hat and IBM, is the terminology been standardized?
So yeah, basically what I have here is pulled almost directly from IBM's terminology. Red Hat is not as far along in the implementation, but when they reviewed it, they're like, yeah, it's basically what we call these things as well. So yeah.
And so are you looking then to try to come up with terminology that would be cross industry?
Yeah, so this should not be tool specific or industry specific.
So I know that one of the writers on my team is also working on Tecton. Do you know Jerry Ochoa?
No.
Okay. It might be interesting to connect with him because he works on the Tecton documentation, and might be interesting to talk with him about terminology stuff. And he actually is familiar with some of the terminology we use around checking policies to see if you have complied with whatever is required internally in your pipeline to be able to deploy whatever it is you want to deploy. So because Google has its own terminology around that stuff. So it might be interesting to have a conversation with him about that, and then maybe what might work as generic terminology.
Yeah. Can I can put my email in here. How about that?
Yeah, that would be great. And then I'll ask Jerry to reach out to you.
Okay.
Speaking
Thank you
of
so much.
Tracy, did we ever get find somebody in CloudBees docs who might be, or do we know how to find out who might be a good person at CloudBees for some of the smart stuff?
Yeah, no, I know folks there, but was there a specific request? I don't recall.
This was like some months ago. We talked about starting to recruit other writers, particularly
Right.
Yes, please.
for the vendor use case.
Okay.
Concept.
Yeah. No, there's a couple of folks, Tammy Fox, so the folks who do like Jenkins docs, I can pull them in. To be honest, I was kind of waiting till we could point them at a contributor guide and a way
Right.
more specifically to get involved, because I think sometimes they might not know how to navigate the early stages of the uncertainty. But once it's more like, here's a section, please go see if you have anything to connect, that might be good. But yeah, actually maybe now's a good time. I can reach out to Tammy and other folks there.
I think it might be useful insofar as helping refine what would make sure we're capturing contributor guide content.
Yep.
By bringing them into the discussion and like, okay, let's make sure we're writing some of this stuff down.
Yeah, and we've kind of run that by most of the board folks and the strategy comms folks. So at least everybody's had some background awareness, even if they haven't kind of graduated to coming to these meetings yet.
Yeah, although I definitely agree that we should probably get some sort of framework in place fairly quickly now, so that we're ready to engage. Otherwise, it's just going to be lots of people going off in random directions, and it'll become hard to put it into a coherent shape again.
Okay.
And yeah, no, I think the work at the interoperability level is orthogonal, but yeah, pretty key. The whole idea that we can first capture what the terms are and then push towards getting folks to centralize on de facto ones that most people use. It'd be great if that keeps evolving. And Anne-Marie, I'll try to think if there's any other folks to pull into that discussion. So you said that's on January 20th?
Meeting, and of course, if anybody wants to put comments on the pull request, that's there too.
Did you drop the pull requests in somewhere?
Yes, they are in the chat. You'll see a 81 and a 76.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Actually, the only 2 pull requests open against that one right now. There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But we'll also need to bear in mind that as the interoperability lexicon pulls together, we'll probably need to go back through and update our documentation to use that standard lexicon.
And I would be interested to see if where it might diverge to, right? Anywhere you're using different terminology. Good.
Awesome. Okay, happy to leave it there. Anything else, anyone? Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good week.